the King of the Ring tournament. I pray to God it's not him. I do not want to see Jinder Mahal win this whole thing. He was terrible as WWE champion. It feels like Jinder Mahal is just, he needs to work on his character. Maybe another release will help him. I mean, it helped him when he left WWE the first time and he came back. Maybe one more time will help him as well. I don't know. After this, we got Raw Women's Champion Charlotte Flair and SmackDown Women's Champion Becky Lynch versus Bianca Belair and Sasha Banks twice. This match would end in a no contest. First, they would battle on the outside. Then it would end in a no contest in the ring as both teams would turn on each other. And Becky Lynch would be the one left standing, walking away from the ring. So, 2 no contests. Very good, WWE. Very smart. After this, we got Doudrop versus Natalya in a Queen's Crown tournament match. Doudrop would pick up the win over Natalya and would move on to the next round to face Shayna Baszler. She is the only face left in this tournament. I'm just pointing out she's the only good guy left in this tournament, so I wouldn't put past her to win, but I want Shayna Baszler to win this thing, in my opinion. Shayna Baszler needs the push. She needs the... Yeah, she needs a push. That's all I'm going to say. After this, we got the SmackDown Tag Team Champions. Your main event, the Usos versus WWE Champion Big E and Drew McIntyre. The Usos would win via countout. Another screwy finish on Raw. That is 3 tag team matches that have ended in screwy finishes. On tonight's Raw, I know what my Battle Royal of the Week is going to be. Big E and Drew McIntyre would basically cost themselves the match as they couldn't coexist and start fighting. It was a very stupid move by WWE to do this. I thought it was a match built out of respect, but maybe it's more of a match built out of want, for Crown Jewel. And that is your Raw review, ladies and gentlemen. Very good Raw, very good SmackDown, but the screwy finishes in the Queen of the Ring tournaments made me left a bad taste in my mouth, But that is it for your SmackDown Raw reviews. Let's go on to the Crown Jewel 2018 coming from Saudi Arabia in the King Stadium in King Saud and University Stadium with 16,000 in attendance. This was built as an almost WrestleMania caliber pay-per-view. It was built around the King of the Ring tournament and a returning Shawn Michaels in D-Generation X versus the Brothers of Destruction in Undertaker and Kane. It was an amazing pay-per-view for some reasons, and yet the worst pay-per-view for other reasons. I'll get to that later. The pre-show kicked off with Shinsuke Nakamura versus Rusev, a United States Championship match, which is funny to see because Shinsuke Nakamura and Rusev would actually end up being tag team partners at WrestleMania 35 the next year, but this time they were locked in a blood feud for the United States Championship. So that is always one to go back and watch. It's also funny to go back and see, okay, he's no longer in the WWE, he's no longer in WWE, he's no longer in, it's funny for me to see that. After this, we got Rey Mysterio versus Orton in your in kicking off the regular show. Rey Mysterio versus Randy Orton in a quarterfinal match for the WWE World Cup. Rey Mysterio would pick up the win over Randy Orton. Randy Orton would then do a lot of damage to Rey Mysterio's ribs and would pick up the win. Rey Mysterio would pick up the win, but it felt more of Randy Orton picked up the win here. After this, we got The Miz versus Jeff Hardy in the quarterfinals match. The Miz would defeat Jeff Hardy with a little bit of chicanery. After this, The Miz would say he hurt his throat and he should not have been involved in the next match, is what he said. And then on the Raw side of the quarterfinals match in the World Cup Championship, you got Seth Rollins, the current Intercontinental Champion and the current Raw Tag Team Champion, versus Bobby Lashley, who was accompanied by Lio Rush. At the time, Lio Rush was still Bobby Lashley's manager, which was fun to see because now Lio Rush being AEW and retiring almost every week Now, don't get me wrong, if Lio Rush is actually injured, and that is why he was retiring, I really hope him nothing but the best, but it seems like every week he comes back to retire. So, Seth Rollins would pick up the win over Bobby Lashley. Seth Rollins also going through the betrayal of Dean Ambrose. This was the second breakup of the Shield. Dean Ambrose had just turned heel on Seth Rollins the night Roman Reigns announced he had leukemia. What a dastardly heel. And this would be the coming of the end of Dean Ambrose in WWE. After this, Seth Rollins would pick up the win over Bobby Lashley. Then we got Dolph Ziggler with Drew McIntyre versus Kurt Angle in the quarterfinals match in the WWE World Cup. Dolph Ziggler would pick up the win with a little chicanery from Drew McIntyre on the outside. Dolph Ziggler would move on in the World Cup. And then we got the Bar of Cesaro and Sheamus with their manager at the time, The Big Show. That was always funny for me to see. I never got that pairing, but okay, I guess it worked. Versus the New Day, Big E and Kofi Kingston with Xavier Woods on the outside. The Bar would pick up the win over the New Day and would retain the SmackDown Tag Team Championships. After this, we got the semifinals match of The Miz versus Rey Mysterio in the World Cup. The Miz would pick up the win over Rey Mysterio in an 11-minute, very good match. These two have had chemistry ever since their old Extreme Rules matches. So I really liked their chemistry here. And then we got Dolph Ziggler versus Seth Rollins in a 13-minute match in the semifinal. Dolph Ziggler would pick up the wins, holding onto the tights of Seth Rollins, and would also a little chicanery from Drew McIntyre on the outside. After this, we got your WWE Championship match. Now, this match was very funny for certain reasons. It was supposed to be Daniel Bryan versus AJ Styles, but Daniel Bryan did not feel comfortable going to Saudi Arabia because at the time, this would also end up with John Cena as well, who was supposed to be in the King of the Ring tournament, or the Best in the World tournament, but there would be no John Cena, no Daniel Bryan, because there was an assassination of a journalist whose name I cannot remember right now, who was in Saudi Arabia at the time, and it was believed the royal family was attached to the assassination. So we will never really know the truth of this, but Daniel Bryan and John Cena both refused to work this, so John Cena was replaced by Bobby Lashley in the World Cup, and Daniel Bryan was replaced by Samoa Joe. Samoa Joe and AJ Styles having a blood feud going back to SummerSlam for the WWE Championship. They would have a very good match here. It would finally be AJ Styles getting over on Samoa Joe because all their matches had ended in different kind of ways, whether it was count-out, disqualification, roll-ups. It was ways that shouldn't have ended. Finally, AJ Styles would pick up the win over Samoa Joe. He would then go on to lose the WWE Championship before Survivor Series to Daniel Bryan. Daniel Bryan turning heel, becoming the planet's champion. So, it would work out for Daniel Bryan in the end. After this, we got Brock Lesnar versus Braun Strowman for a singles match for the vacated Universal Championship. It was originally supposed to be a triple threat match, but Roman Reigns would reveal he was battling leukemia at the time. He would come back before WrestleMania 35 to have a match with Drew McIntyre at WrestleMania 35, which he would win. But because he had leukemia, he vacated the Universal Championship. And before the match, Braun Strowman would be attacked with the Universal Championship by Raw's acting GM Baron Corbin. Baron Corbin would say that I did it because Raw needed a real champion, and that is not Braun Strowman. This will lead to a feud between them going into TLC, where Baron Corbin would lose the match and would lose his Raw GM spot. Brock Lesnar would hit 4 F5s. So it would take 4 F5s to keep the monster down. And Brock Lesnar would win the Universal Championship. And then after this, we got the finals of the World Cup tournament. It was supposed to be The Miz and Dolph Ziggler, who have amazing chemistry, and not just in the ring, but outside the ring. They are apparently best friends. They have come from Cleveland together, and once they found out that they lived like 2 minutes apart from each other, never knew each other growing up, they became best friends ever since. Dolph Ziggler has been on countless episodes of Miz and Mrs. He's been on anything The Miz has been on. Dolph Ziggler is right beside him. They are apparently best friends outside of the ring, so this match was supposed to be great. But as The Miz throws out Dolph Ziggler outside of the ring and goes to get out, he hurts his knee, and Shane McMahon comes out and asks him if he could continue. The Miz says, yes, I've never been hurt. But Shane McMahon sees the pain in The Miz's eyes and says, no, you can't. I am coming in. I am taking over for you. I'm going to face Dolph Ziggler in this King of the Ring. And he would beat Dolph Ziggler. Shane McMahon would beat Dolph Ziggler in a 2-minute match. It was supposed to be a very good match, but everyone got the pain of seeing Shane McMahon turn heel after this against The Miz and would have a WrestleMania 35 match against The Miz at a Falls Count Anywhere match. It would be a huge Shane heel turn and basically led to the crowd completely turning on Shane, not wanting him in WWE at all. And after this, he would have a match with Kevin Owens, and he would get terrible go-away heat. And we would basically never see Shane until WrestleMania 37. So that's what happens. Shane McMahon wins the World Cup. Shane McMahon defeats Dolph Ziggler by pinfall. And now, ladies and gentlemen, this match has been called the worst match ever. It's been called one of the worst main events in WWE history. It won Worst Match of the Year from Dave Meltzer. And you can see why it's unfortunate, because it should have been a good match. Triple H and Shawn Michaels, The Undertaker, and Kane, some of the best workers in WWE ever. They are some of the safest, some of the best. But unfortunately, 2 minutes into this match, Triple H would tear a pec and would be sidelined for months with injuries. And after this, Shawn Michaels would tag in, and it would just be botch after botch after botch. The Undertaker would not be able to hit the choke slam. That would not be able to hit the tombstone. Kane's mask would fall off. Triple H would stay outside injured, basically be unable to do anything in the match. Shawn Michaels would have to do everything in his first match back in over, I would believe, 8 years, maybe 10. And it was just, it's been called the worst main event ever, and it definitely deserves it. If you're looking for a laugh, go watch it. If you're a masochist, go watch it. But it is a match that I can't watch ever again. And I'm a big wrestling. I'm a huge Undertaker fan. I love to think of everything he does as one of the best ever. But this match should have never happened. And that is your 2018 Crown Jewel review. Next week we'll have the 2019 Crown Jewel review. And then we will go into your Crown Jewel predictions next week. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to dive into the WWIE, World Wrestling If Entertainment. What would have happened if the Hardys stayed in Impact? Do you believe me when I tell you WrestleMania 35 would have looked a whole lot different if the Hardys stayed in Impact Wrestling? Here's what would have happened. First off, you would have never had them in that ladder match at WrestleMania 33. And who would have won that match? In my opinion, Enzo and Cass would. They would have been the most over team in that match. They would have had the most hype sales. And you know what? Enzo and Cass would have won the Raw Tag Team Champions. And then they never split after WrestleMania 33. And guess what? Because they never split, Enzo is always hanging out with Big Cass. And they always evened each other out. Enzo would have become a purge to the locker room as he did on the Cruiserweight circuit. He would have eventually turned heel with Big Cass. They would have turned heel eventually, but they would have not been. Big Cass would have. They even each other out, in my opinion. So maybe maybe that club door doesn't open for Enzo in Phoenix, and maybe he doesn't meet that girl who claims he assaulted her. And I'm not saying he didn't. All I know is the evidence. There was no evidence to support her facts. And all her friends came out and said she was lying, so I don't know if it's true or not. But let's say That club door doesn't open. Cass is like, hey, Enzo, let's go